It's like, so what loot did I get? Well, 2 IT guys, here's a janitor.
Everything we know, from people and ants to stars and galaxies to quarks and atoms, the entire universe, might just be a simulation running inside a supercomputer inside an even bigger universe. Ancient philosophers said that the universe is a dream that we're waiting to wake up from. In this dream world of the imagination, anything is possible. All cultural items, from the dreams of our rodent-like ancestors, to books, to television shows, are merely permutations of the reality we think we live in. Today's age of computers and video games places simulations at the center of our cultural consciousness. A select group of us perform simulations for fun and profit, and we call them games, role-playing and otherwise. We live to run simulations. Join us on the Simulationist podcast as we explore our culture of simulations.
Hello, once again, welcome to the Simulationist podcast. This is iteration 62 recorded on November the 10th, 2013. My name is Josh Trelevin. Across from me, as always,
is the co-host, Ryan Kirkby.
The co-host. I guess we're both co-hosts.
No, you're the primary guy. You're the co-host. I get to be the co-host.
Okay. That's what anyways.
It makes me sound like a salmon.
I'm the guy who introduces us, and thus I have done so. So we can move on to the next part of the well, I should ask you, how's it going?
It's been going slow this week. Okay. In addition to a busy work week, I've also been working through a lot of bug work in the mod I'm making for Dwarf Fortress.
Squashing bugs.
The thing, it's always the little things that seem to get me. I have a nice idea, like, oh, I can do this and I can do that, but it just never seems to go straight all the time. And so, well, I've got this wonderful place for, dwarves to conduct mad science on each other. The reactions aren't working like I had hoped. Okay. You don't get an experience for a reaction that doesn't produce something, so you have to have a product. So I can't just make a dwarf, research something. They have to research and produce something. Okay. So I came up with a stone that is always a gas. It has a fixed temperature of room temperature, and it turns into a gas at 2 degrees beneath that. So you'd create the stone, and then it would vaporize instantly into nothingness.
Okay.
So it's
you can't breathe it in, or anything?
Well, you can breathe it in, but it just doesn't do anything. Okay. It has no negative effects and disappears quite rapidly.
Okay. Yeah.
So that way, it's producing a product that really isn't anything. And for some reason, when I have them work this reaction, it takes a dwarf from completely unskilled, because that's how I like to start testing them out on this sort of thing.
Okay.
The dwarf doesn't know anything about diagnostics, because it's just for medicine, You got to be a nice doctor, you got to know diagnostics, right?
Sure, yeah.
It takes them completely untrained. They don't know an elbow from a kidney. And then with one reaction, they go straight to legendary, so it's giving way too much experience. Which is something I've never seen in any of these reactions I've ever worked with before, which makes it odd because I'm basically copy-pasting from an earlier work that I've done.
Okay. Well, I'm picturing somebody discovering how to make lead into gold, and be because that's the sort of magnitude of the reaction, I suppose. If you're able to create gaseous stone, or some.
Well, it's just a byproduct to make sure they gain something out of it. I mean, I could make anything appear as a product, but I don't want it to be a permanent thing. I don't want them to get something from nothing.
Dwarf Fortress. They can't keep what they get.
Dwarf Fortress is not about getting something for nothing. It's about paying for it.
Well, if you synthesize a new element, you don't get to keep it very long in real life.
Well, in Dwarf Fortress, you can make alloys out of the stuff. Whether or not some things are popular is actually determined by the value compared to its base products.
Okay.
You can say, oh, this type of nickel silver or sterling silver is a viable reaction, but unless it's necessary for a mandate, you're technically losing value on it compared to its basic products. So it's not an advisable product to create things out of.
Okay.
So, it's heavily dependent, and yes, the people who do play the game tend to think that way. So for that, I don't want to say, oh, hey, take this as for free. It seems almost like cheating.
Yeah.
So I want, if they're going to have something, they're going to have to earn it.
Oh, sure, of course.
But that's not working right, and I can't get some of the armor to be made. So, I have surgical masks for the dwarves, because that sounds like something nice for a nice mad scientist to wear, right? You know, surgeon's mask on there.
Yes.
Which I basically took the block of coding for a face veil and just changed the name.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, dwarves don't naturally make face veils, so I don't know where to make it, and I can't find where it would be. It's not in the clothier stuff I know how to make. It's not in the leather worker's shop. I can't find it.
So what do you make veils out of? Silk or something?
Well, that's the thing. In the game, I've got it set for being able to be made out of cloth and leather.
Yeah.
So if you want to have like a badass leather face, claw,
Yeah.
I mean, it really wouldn't work properly as a face mask, but it looks cool, so I'll make it go that way.
Well, the thongs, the strings or thongs that would tie it onto your face might be leather, especially in a like medieval or early modern era, I guess.
But see, what I was working with on this was that it's just supposed to be made nice and simple, and I can't find it in any spot. So if you want to make it out of leather, if you want to make it out of cloth, I got no clue where that's supposed to be. And I would like to put that in, the block where I'm saying, like, this is what you make, this is where you can find them, by the way, because it's not a normal something that dwarves would make.
Okay.
Like a head cap, you make that, in the Smith's Forge as part of the armor-making stuff. I can't find goggles there. So I may have to check. I may have just entered in something wrong so that dwarves don't naturally make that sort of thing. I coded improperly.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure so by where they make it, you mean like there's a room or a laboratory of something?
For most of the stuff, it's an item that gets created would be in the appropriate area. If you're making armor, that would be in the metalsmith's shop.
Okay.
And so they'd make it as part of their armor, but that apparently isn't happening. I might have to make it such that they can only create the item in the Mad Scientist lab, which I'm not exactly ecstatic about. But if that's what it takes, that's what it takes.
Okay, yeah, I suppose, you wouldn't necessarily make goggles and masks and things all in the lab, because that's for lab stuff to do.
Yeah, it wouldn't make more sense to make your lab, jacket out of, like cloth at the clothier's shop?
Yeah, and there's a clothier's in the game.
There is a clothier's shop in the game,
okay.
And I assumed all sorts of cloth items would be just made there by default, but it's not quite it. It might be it. Maybe I coded it improperly. So I have to figure out what's the problem. There's no error log, so I don't think I spelt something wrong. I might have just put something in incorrectly in the wrong spot.
Well,
Forgotten end bracket, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah, I want to say, though, like, for a mad scientist, the crazy, especially going back in time to before the time when science was an industry. I mean, like nowadays we have companies that make your lab coats and your
There are companies that will clean the stuff just to lab specifications because the generic cleaners aren't good enough. But there's sub-industries within this whole thing too.
Turn the clock back, 200 years, and those scientists had to make their own lab coats and had to do their own sterilizing and do their own all this stuff. And if they failed, well, I guess they die of radiation poisoning or whatever.
Or contamination. There's all sorts of little things that they did. I mean,
or plague, yeah.
Well, that's the thing. I got a plague mask too. I can't find out where that's made. It should be able to be made out of wood too, so it'd be nice to have a nice wooden plague mask sitting on there because it's supposed to have the nice beak. There's nothing that says it has the beak on there, but just by saying a plague mask, that's how it looks.
Yeah. Well, describe the plague mask in case people haven't already seen it.
People probably have seen it, but maybe not known it as the plague mask. The concept of the guy with the large brimmed hat and the weird bird face mask on.
Like a giant bird.
It's like a really long. And it's supposed to be that you fill the beak full of like rose petals or other stuff, and then the goodness of the rose petals cancels out the nasty air of the virus. There is no actual filtration system in there, so it's basically just I get to work around corpses and heavily infected people. But at least I get to smell the roses.
And this is something people actually
thought would save them.
Yeah,
the rest of the outfit was very well done. It was all waxed leather. So not only would, it's nice and thick to resist, but you could get like, oh no, pus spilled on my forearm. That's okay, it's waxed leather. It washes off.
Yeah.
So you just get some water, you wash it off. Good as new.
But this was before the era of washing hands, so they wouldn't...
Well, they had gloves on and everything. Their entire body was like effectively set up in the medieval equivalent of a hazmat suit.
Well, that's interesting. Like, how did they even come to decision to do that? Is it just...
I think it may have been an intrinsic, this is disgusting, I don't want to touch it, I don't want my body to be even risk touching it, I'm going to dress myself all up in waxed leather, and that is that.
But they didn't have theories of transmission.
They did have theories
like
of disgusting.
You
You don't have to be very knowledgeable. You don't have to be a
Yeah.
scientist to know that's kind of disgusting, buddy. You should not be leaking that out of there. So, I'm just going to make sure I don't actually have to touch any of that because, God damn it, I'm paying too much.
I will say, though, it's funny because there's a contradiction in scientists and doctors and people like that. Because before they had a germ theory or theories of transmission and whatever, the doctors would sort of be like, well, no, I'm a scientist, and so I am going to ignore the feelings of revulsion and just, touch my patients or do whatever they have to do. And then they didn't, they're resistant to things like washing hands after that because they're like, no, we're doing our science and we're not, being afraid of corpses is superstition because a corpse isn't going to hurt you.
It's not even moving. What could it do to you?
So they'd be like, get all up in it and touch it and move.
But here's where evolution takes a hand in there.
Yeah.
The scientists who held that belief would get more heavily infected from all the weird, crazy medieval diseases they were touching, and thus get sick and die. Those who did have at least a little apprehension, enough to wear some gloves, survived. And that's why gloves were, popular even in the late medieval, ages.
I think that might be a solid theory, why they would have even had those big suits.
Where actual tendencies of evolution have influenced our technological progress. It doesn't happen an awful lot, but when you're working with doctors, it actually does apply. Yeah, kind of weird that way, isn't it?
And they must have had some theory of, transmissible diseases because they had lepers and stuff, and they were like,
don't touch them.
Touch lepers.
Well, it might also be because, hey, buddy, these guys fall apart sometimes. Don't touch them, not for your sake, for theirs. You make them lose a finger because you touched them the wrong way. You're going to have to help them out. So, it wasn't always for the best reasons, but at least they had a reason.
Yeah, and then thank goodness we live in a modern age now. So
honestly, I'm just happy that the time we got steam cleaning as something you could do. Because that really does clean pretty much everything. Yeah. If you can't wash it properly, steam clean the darn thing, great.
Okay.
And, you can also do some interesting cooking styles that way, too. Apparently you can make some very otherwise tough foods just absolutely...
With a steam cleaner?
Well, this whole steaming process.
Okay. Yeah.
Back in the day, it was basically the same sort of thing. It was put your stuff in a pressure cooker type thing. It steam cleans it all, whether it be your utensils or your trout. And so you'd have the whole thing. It'd be just you wouldn't even have to worry about fish bones apparently.
Trout.
Yeah, you wouldn't have to worry about like bones in the trout. It's stuck in my throat and this hurts. I hate fish bones.
The steam would soften the
It
bone?
Would soften it to a jelly. So you just scoop it up and just 2 scoops on top of an ice cream cone, man. There you go. It's beautifully soft.
When you say trout ice cream.
It wasn't even ice cream, man, but it was just so soft you could scoop it like that sort of thing. Put it on the ice cream cone because we don't have anything else to put it on.
It's funny. I was getting very appetized until you said put in an ice cream cone, and then for some reason that didn't do it for me.
Well, I can imagine trout ice cream not being a nice combination. Something about fish and dairy just doesn't seem to work the same way.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Some things work, some things don't, and it doesn't always work for the same people. After all, look at Clamato juice.
Yeah. I like
for those of you out there
juice.
who don't know, it's clam juice and tomato juice together at last.
Yeah.
Because there's such an obvious combination of flavors.
Hey, I love it.
I tried to get into it. It must taste completely different with alcohol put in there, because just the Clamato itself is...
Well, I like it either way. I like it with alcohol and without.
Because I tried it. My wife had no idea what it was. They don't have Clamato in the Philippines. Mm-hmm. And so trying to expose her to that, it's just the two of us, it took us 4 hours to get a single can of that down. We could just have little sips and then,
you kept on working at it, though. That's persistence.
I am tenacious and slightly cheap. I'm very loath to throw away anything I've paid good money for.
Well...
if the food goes bad, the food goes bad, but the Clamato juice is going to be okay for at least the rest of the night. Keep sipping. But yes, long story short, I'm having a hard time getting a little bit of the coding right. And my mad scientist laboratory isn't being built the way I would like it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't find the proper way to ask for tubes or like hollow sections of pipe. So I'm going to have to double check on that, look at some other mods, see where people have used that and what the actual term is for it.
So tubes, I'm not sure, like for test tubes and stuff?
No, in this case it's like to represent generic machinery pieces. So it's like, okay, you need a giant, spinning corkscrew, some tubes, and a table for, that's where you conduct your science. It'll be in the center. That's your table there.
Okay.
And so I'm working on it, but I just haven't seen the coding for what it says. Like if you need a mechanism, how do you ask for that? What do you use? And so now I got to either hunt it down through a pre-existing mod or do some deep search on the Magma Wikipedia. Well, it's not the actual Wikipedia, but their sub-wiki that they have
the
for
wiki.
it.
Yeah.
They call it the Magma Wiki.
The Magma Wiki? Okay. Yeah, cool.
Because Magma's the answer to everything.
Mm-hmm.
But, I'm working on that sort of stuff. It's been slow going, though, because proper correction of bugs is always slow going, because you don't want to make things worse saying, oh, this must have been the issue, and then you look at the error log and there's twice as many things popping up. It's very precise. So, slow going this week, but ultimately rewarding. I'm learning more. And I'm having a fun time doing it. If I, have that sort of mentality, I like it, so be it. It's not for everyone. But how about you? What's your story this week?
Okay. Well, last night I watched a Japanese movie called, Honey Cutie, I think it's called. Honey Cutie. It's about a superhero who's a girl, and it's a really crazy, cartoony show. It's not a cartoon, but from
what I've been told, it's been very popular. I keep seeing references to it pop up time and again.
Yeah, well, let me see.
Following, maybe?
Yeah. I did enjoy it. It was in Japanese, and I don't speak Japanese.
No subtitles or anything?
And we didn't have the I think the version we had, no subtitles. Luckily it's a very visual movie, it's fancy costumes and, big action and very, a lot of fast cuts, Do you remember, there's lots of movies that do fast cuts now,
much more prominent than they used to be, I'll say that.
Yeah, what's the comic book one that just came out about the...
Avengers?
No.
Kick-Ass?
A funnier one.
So was it Kick-Ass?
No, it wasn't Kick-Ass.
Wait, you're not thinking about Kevin Smith's Comic Book Man TV series, are you?
No, it's on the tip of my tongue. It's not that. It's the one with the ex-boyfriends that they have to fight.
Oh, that would be Scott Pilgrim.
Scott Pilgrim, that's the one.
Yes,
okay.
That's an excellent one. I do thoroughly recommend everybody get a chance to watch that.
All right, yeah. So it's got weird cuts and and it's sort of fast and stuff like that. Or I guess another example. It's not much like Kung Fu Hustle, but occasionally it has those.
But it does physically enact it out, so you don't always need to, for Kung Fu Hustle, you don't necessarily need to read the subtitles at the bottom of it when you're watching it. You can just watch the scene and know what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. It's often it's a fight or it's, something like that. But
at least it's very well choreographed for an international audience.
I guess so. It's hard to say because I don't watch a lot of movies that I don't understand the language in. And
I give it a try every once in a while.
Yeah.
When I first watched Mirror Mask, for some reason the language was set to Portuguese. I didn't notice until about 15 minutes in. I thought they'd start speaking English. It's okay, they're speaking in some sort of other language. I have to interpret from how their motions go. This is how I learn the characters. Yeah. Then they'll fade into English, right? They'll fade into English, right? Oh, what's going on? Oh, Portuguese. Start over again.
Oh, yeah.
That's it. I learned a lot about the characters from how they moved. So yes, ultimately, did you like it? Was it something you'd recommend, especially if they can find subtitles or dubbed over?
I think I'll have to watch it again with subtitles, but I would recommend watching it. It was enjoyable.
So here's the question, though. With the subtitles, will it be the same movie that you watch?
I don't think so. I think it'll be different.
Because I remember, what was that, the TV series, Samurai Pizza Cats.
Yeah.
It's not the same in English as it is in Japanese.
Okay.
They basically just, well, if you go online and you see like the abridged series, they'll take the animation and then they'll dub in completely ridiculous other stuff to it. And that's basically what they did with Samurai Pizza Cats about 15, 20 years before anyone did that on YouTube, because YouTube didn't exist then.
Yeah.
So it's technically a completely different thing. So how would you know if they subtitled it and just started making stuff up as they went? It happens.
I mean, I at one point I was thinking of the movie, and I was thinking like, oh, if I were to say, write what they're saying, I could probably make an interesting movie and just, and I could do that for all kinds of movies. Just write out, don't either turn the sound off or listen to foreign films and just make up the script as you'd watch. And
it would be kind of interesting to see some classic movies done over with like, okay, we're going to mute it and then we're going to rework it and see what we can get out of this.
Yeah.
If you're working in Hollywood, we've just given you a quick, easy idea for reselling the same thing, and all you have to do is hire some voice actors. You're welcome.
Yeah, there you go. Cool.
You make it a yearly thing, maybe distribute it online, let people like stream it for free. At least that one, gets people in to see the advertising stuff. Whatever.
Yep.
You probably won't be that generous if you're in Hollywood. You'll probably charge people money for it, but I'm just throwing out ideas here.
Well, I mean, Hollywood's one person, but we also have like all the podcasters. Hopefully, are all also listening to us, and that world, the internet world, I think is sort of going to eclipse Hollywood. So all you need now is a good idea.
Which, by the way, is an interesting thing for you people out there. If you're watching us on, say, YouTube, what you can do is just find yourself an animated series of whatever type. That they put up there illegally, but they put it up there. Just put that on when we're speaking, and then mute them so that it's like us, like Daffy and Bugs speaking over like a cartoon episode.
That's a great idea. I might even put that in there. Well, I don't think I can take Daffy and Bugs because that's copyright. But
you can't do that, but it's a good idea. And I remember having a lot of fun putting music on during Saturday morning cartoons when we'd seen all the cartoons, and see how long they could sync up with the songs. The simple pleasures of rural childhoods.
Or you could put what's the one that they played to Dark Side of the Moon? Is it Wizard of Oz?
That's the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking though, because we are pure voice and we have to keep speaking, stuff with the Looney Tunes, it's a lot of character-driven stuff, and they do a lot of talking in addition to the visual gags.
Okay.
So cartoons, it's a little easier to sync the mouth up to whatever anybody says. They use generic face motions. So you can work it that way. And I think it works best with cartoons. That said, there has been a lot of cartoon versions of Wizard and Oz. Dorothy's various adventures throughout. You can find almost the entire 40 books worth, I believe, in an animated version in some manner. If you've got it, put it on. There's an extra idea and some extra fun. Tell us if you can find something that syncs up perfectly, because we're not trying for this. But if it does, you'll blow even our minds off of this revelation.
That would be pretty cool.
So, just putting that out there. Putting it out there.
Yeah. Good thought.
So, yes, anything else this week?
Well, I played a bit of Minecraft. I did, I built like a little, not little, actually fairly large. I hollowed out a cavern in the nether, in the hell dimension of Minecraft. And I filled the bottom with like grass and trees and stuff.
Oh, nice.
So it's like a little, a haven, I guess.
A little utopia.
Yeah.
In the midst of hell.
And I recorded that and put it on YouTube. And then I built like a little house, like a little wooden house off in the corner. And of course it burned down.
Wood. It happens.
Well, it doesn't have to burn, but there just happened to be lava in the wall, like a couple blocks away. I almost... Well, I did. I mean, I always die in the nether, like from either
That's
pigmen
what you do in the nether.
Lava or
you die. It's the nether.
Yeah. So, I died from that. Well, I didn't die from that lava that burned my house, but I found it in the
Tried
wall.
to build a house in the middle of the nether. Found lava. House burned down. The second house I made.
Yeah.
And then you just repeat that until you create a gigantic tower that stays above the muck.
Yeah, I rebuilt my wooden house, and as silly as it is to make things out of wood in the nether, but hey, yeah.
Hey, just because it's not feasible doesn't mean it's not a fun idea. The fact that it's so fragile, actually, you could say adds a certain aesthetic beauty to it.
Yeah, I think so. So I'll build it again if it burns down again.
It's like people in Dwarf Fortress who wind up making an entire castle, and subterranean complex using only glass. Technically, the glass is as indestructible as any wall, but just the imagination of it was built out of a wonderful, harsh, glass, and could be shattered at any moment. That's kind of beautiful.
Yeah, for sure.
So, just because it's not right, just because it's it shouldn't work, doesn't mean it's not beautiful when it does. I've seen people build lava ways made out of ice, ice floors, ice walls. It doesn't melt from temperature once it's a wall or a floor.
Okay.
So it can actually just transport the lava.
Well, yeah.
Just because it's wrong. That's why some people do it. Good times, good times.
So I think I'm not doing NaNoWriMo this month, though.
I would like to have tried.
Late.
I had some nice ideas for, doing some short stories to get the numbers there and force myself to write, but it's been a busy couple of weeks already.
But I will encourage anyone out there to, it isn't too late. Well, it's not too late for me to start, although I probably won't start.
You have to effectively do almost 2,000 words a day to make your total.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's possible. I don't know.
Provided you have the inspiration that gets you to have the writing flow freely, shouldn't be that hard.
Well, I think NaNoWriMo is less about inspiration, more about perspiration. That said, a quote
though,
from someone, I can't remember who said that, but
a lot of people have been misattributed to it, so it's okay if you don't attribute it to anybody. We'll just generify it for the rest of the future. But the thing is that if you don't have any inspiration to write, it's not just perspiration, it's the blood, sweat, and tears that come out of brute force. Nothing beautiful comes out of something without an inspiration. No building looks great without a decent architect being inspired by something.
No, well, I mean, I like inspiration. I'm a fan of inspiration and cool ideas. But I also think that necessity is the mother of invention. To steal another quote from who knows where.
But, well, here's the thing. Is it's not too hard just to pick an idea and then write something about it. Like, okay, this will be a zombie, apocalypse scenario. But it's not going to be human-based zombies. Instead, whatever force it is that's animating the dead is animating the dinosaurs at a museum. And so now the people that decided to lock themselves in the museum for safety reasons during the zombie apocalypse have to contend with these skeletal dinosaurs trying to eat them despite the fact they lack organs.
Is that a Ben Stiller movie? Or?
I think Ben Stiller had a movie with a dinosaur in it.
Okay.
But there was I've never actually watched that.
It wasn't a dinosaur zombie. Okay.
It wasn't a zombie apocalypse scenario. So this way you can have like Dawn of the Dead meets Jurassic Park. And there's enough inspiration for you to have fun with. It doesn't need to be a good idea or great inspiration. Okay. Just anything like, okay, how does this play out? I'll come up with some stock characters. Do the stock teen characters that we usually use for the zombie movies, does that apply? Can that be applied to scientists? Is there a concept of like the stoner archaeologist? I don't think so, but let's have some fun. Let's try and make this work.
Stoner archaeologist. I'm sure lots of archaeologists probably partake.
I'm not sure if they do it while on the job, though.
On the job.
I've been told archaeology is very painstakingly slow and meticulous, and you don't want to have your mind not in the game on it, though.
Isn't it? Oh, well. Anyway.
I've known a few people that have done archaeological digs, and they say it can get really annoying, really painful, especially on the back, because you're usually hunched over, just kind of digging through stuff. But you need your head in the game, otherwise you'll damage something, or you'll wind up having something get passed by. And that's actually not uncommon. One of the things they're doing over in Egypt right now is they had this big pile from we excavated this area and this is where we dumped all this stuff. They're going back through that now with a finer tooth style and seeing what was left behind that people thought was just junk.
Oh, yeah.
And now that we have much better microscopes and all that, we're finding little bits of this is a mummy wrapping and we can see that there are resin in here, and we're learning things from what we thought was just the garbage pile from the last excavations.
That's cool.
That is very cool. Unfortunately, then another 30, 40 years they're going to have to go through that pile again for the updated information.
Yeah.
And so eventually no one's going to be actually excavating anything new. They're just going to be going continuously through the piles throughout all their waste sites.
Yeah.
But, whatever. If that's what they want to do, that's what they want to do.
Cool. I also want to mention, well, not much...
no real conspiracy thoughts this week.
I want to mention GotaCon coming up, just because I'm looking forward to it. GotaCon in February in Victoria. Yes. Sunny Victoria, BC. I hope that everybody
Sunny Victoria. That's a nice joke.
No, it's not really.
Not in February.
Sort of gray Victoria is sort of how it really is.
Any day it's not raining, the weather's fine by us.
I mean, we're not known for our rain, but I get...
Well, compared to the rest of the province, we are. I mean, when it's snowing there, we complain about the rain, and the rest of us just flip us off. That's kind of how I remember it working back in the interior.
Yeah, well, true. Oh, anyways, yes, looking forward to GotaCon. And
the tickets are starting to go on sale, so pick them up.
Tickets are on sale.
Take a look at what's popping up. Make sure you book your time appropriately. If there's a panel you got to see, make sure you've planned that out in advance.
Yeah. And I want to let you know that I will be there, and I will be... we won't have a table or anything like that, but I will be recognizable with a name tag, wandering around, and so, yeah.
I'll have an Indiana Jones hat on. It actually is an Indiana Jones official one, so, it's got the logo on the side and everything. That said, that may not distinguish me enough from there, so you're just going to have to listen to my voice.
Well, we're podcasters, so, I mean, I don't expect... In fact, maybe no one will recognize us, but I will be there.
Of a podcaster.
It doesn't matter. I'm just going there to be part of the ambiance and experience the, games and gamers.
I do like watching the Warhammer and the Warhammer 40K guys just do their little scenarios, just watch as they meticulously move their armies. Yeah. I enjoy watching that. It turns out it is a bit of a spectator sport, and it's a lot cheaper than actually playing the game and spending the time painting all your figurines.
Yeah, you just catch a game in action. That's what GotaCon is for, anyways.
It gives you a nice chance to look at the stuff. It's kind of a watch before you buy sort of scenario.
Yep.
Although I said I've been reading a lot on the Warhammer 40K still this week, and I am thinking about spending a little bit of cash picking up the generic Space Marines painting set, and then painting each one a different style and color. There's some very nice things I've seen for armies, and they look nice. I want to give a hand, try I'll do an ultramarine all blue with the white trim there, and this one I want to try different styles and patterns on.
Yeah. And
it's cheap enough. It's plastic figurines there. Sure.
So, but what you'd end up with is like a rainbow army?
Or at least two small sets fighting each other. It's okay. It turns out this one is... it's a Traitor Legion member, so he goes on this side. This one is, he's on the right side, so he's for the regular Marines.
I like how the traitors, they're like, okay, we're traitors now, so we're going to get a different color uniform.
You know what? All of them have. After the Horus Heresy, where they rebel against the Emperor of Mankind, they do find some sort of time to paint all their armor a different color. On the other hand, sometimes there were like a million of them fighting at the same time, so color coordination actually does help.
I guess because you wouldn't know wouldn't know who's on your side.
They all look the same, and it's the same basic power armor. It's just you're one of this legion, eh? Okay. How can you tell that? Color coordinate. It's the same as heraldry in real life. When you have the two armies on the battleground, which one do you swing your sword at? Oh no, he's allied. I can tell from his heraldry. Don't chop his head off.
Yeah, and that's why we have the phrase "true colors."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I guess if somebody's wearing false colors, they'd be like, a spy, like sneaking into the other team.
Or assassin, depending on how good they are. Spies are for amateur work because you can have anybody try and spy, but an assassin is a professional.
Yeah.
I mean, heck, that's why we get the term Black Knight from. It's a man without heraldry.
Yeah. Well, but wouldn't he be sort of out in the open? It's like, who is that? He's not he's fighting for either side.
He has no declared allegiance. Yeah. He's the Black Knight. He's the mysterious figure. Which might be why we have a man in black scenario these days.
Okay, yeah.
The parallels between them, I think, set themselves up fairly obviously, so we won't go too in-depth there, but it does make a certain amount of sense of the undeclared professional. So
Yeah, the man in black doesn't have an identity, doesn't have like a...
Well, his identity is a non-identity. He's a nobody in a suit. Da-da-da-da. He wants to stop by, ask you a few questions, see what you know, and then he'll leave in a black van, unmarked, no license plates.
Yeah.
Or maybe, next day you see him flying in a black helicopter, depending on how your conspiracy theory goes.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. Well, and it's funny because that definition only comes because we're so used to the colored, insignia, which is artificial,
Yeah. I mean, they don't really happen much, outside of the animal kingdom, like butterfly patterns. You don't really see the same sort of like species-based insignia.
I like to imagine like the butterfly war. Like the two sides, the butterfly sides, like, here's the orange and black ones on this side, and here's the blue and yellow. Let's see, blue and yellow on the other side, and they're like, battling. They're butterflies.
It was the most beautiful war that was ever beheld by mortal eyes. It was absolutely majestic, and unfortunately, because they're so weak, all they could do was flutter at each other. There were no casualties, despite 3 days of intense conflict.
Well, isn't like if you touch a butterfly's wing, doesn't that like prevent it from flying? Or, I don't know if that's true.
For someone as big and crude as you or I, because they're so thin, if you do touch them delicately, they can fly. But we got sausage fingers. I mean, just look at the size comparison. Like, you out there at home, stick up your index finger and look at it. That is thicker than in like 2 butterflies back to back. That would be the equivalent of a giant creature who has a finger twice as thick as your torso poking at you. The chance that they would poke you gently is very slim. And if you had like a big sheet of paper up and try to ask them to poke it without harming it, well, just think about that yourselves. It's just a size difference thing.
Okay, yeah. But I also thought that they had like sort of a dust or something that's...
No, that's one of the things that parents are initially made up to keep kids from abusing wildlife. Like, don't touch the baby bird, otherwise its parents won't accept it and they'll kick it out of the nest.
And, well, is that
that is completely bunk.
Okay.
Birds will frequently have in their nests like babies that are either not related to one or both of the parents. There are entire species of birds that will lay eggs in the nest of another species so that species will, hatch the egg and raise that kid. By the way, that baby bird that gets hatched will then, when the parents aren't looking, kick out the actual native baby birds out, fall down to the ground and kill them, and become the only sole one and gets more resources that way.
Yeah, I've heard that.
That is an absolutely horrific life, and that is nature. If you want to figure out what is nature, what is neutrality within like a D&D perspective, that is technically neutral.
Yeah.
Red of tooth and claw, indeed.
Yeah.
So, just putting that out there for you guys. A little science factoid for the week.
There you go. Okay. How
but
did
yes,
you get there?
From butterflies and heraldry.
Oh, yeah, heraldry, yes. Okay.
So I suppose, it doesn't work really the same with them, though. I mean, you have like a butterfly or a moth without any patterning on the back, and it just looks blank. So,
the Black Moth works
on
either side.
Sounds like a decent villain in a superhero setting.
Yeah.
Black Moth! How dare you arrive here? Da-da-da-da. Okay, I'm taking a note for that. That's one of the more super villains we've created. We'll add him next to the gluten glutton and the eco-terrorist.
Okay.
So, hooray! More villains. So, yeah.
The Simulationist Rogues Gallery. Anyways.
And maybe if we get popular, we can have our fans dress up like that for GotaCon. Whoever has the best costume, that becomes the official costume for the villain. We're setting out the rules now. But so that's what's been going on this week. GotaCon's kicking into the higher gear as they prep up the final stages.
Yeah, and there's, I don't know, the wheels turning. People doing stuff.
Everything starts coming together.
Yeah. It's funny. It's a convention,
Well, this year's a bit different because it's not at the Perks Recreational Facility. It's over on Johnson Street, across from on the back side of the Empress Hotel.
Yeah.
So things are going to be a little different. People are going to be a little bit more uptight because it's not like the usual.
More uptight, yeah.
Well, it requires a lot of coordination going on, and now it's in a different location. So you can't just like, oh, I've done this 5 years in a row, for work. I've been helping out, volunteering. It's just going to be the same as. No, this time we got to double check to make sure. Different location, different setup. So, a little bit more work required.
Yeah, I think so. But I think it's all going to work out just fine.
It's a beautiful place. I've seen it. It's a nice spot to have a convention.
Yep.
That said, Perks was closer to where I live, so dang it, I would have liked to have it there a little while longer.
Yeah.
Well, c'est la vie. C'est la vie.
Yeah.
We do have an official topic this week. Oh, but first, I do want to mention something quickly. I noted, the second Thor movie's out, The Dark World. Elves are attacking. I've been told if you like drow elves, watch it. It's a good example of drow elves on the big screen.
The drow elves.
That said, they're actually doing a bit of a crossover with their Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Okay, yeah.
So one of the episodes is actually going to have Thor in there, and he'll be in and flexing his big godly biceps.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the episode, so I can't state exactly what's going on or how it crosses over, but it will.
Yeah.
So, what do you think about this? Does this make you want to watch the movie a little bit more? Because it certainly makes me want to watch more, because I've been watching the series. I like the series, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Well, I do want to watch the movie. I don't know. It's hard to say what degree of interest is, further interest is piqued in me.
Well, I missed Iron Man 3, and that was the first movie out of the entire, incredible, plan that they had from 10 years ago that I've missed. Everything else I've seen in the theaters, and that was the first one I missed. I'm a busy dad now. I mean, I can't just say, oh, I'll go to the movies tonight, because no, I'm responsible. I'm not going to take a 10-month-old kid with me into the theater on the off chance, say, oh, I'm sure she'll be quiet for 2 hours. She won't want to do anything else. No.
Well,
I could do that, but I don't want to become that person. I've yelled at that person before.
If she doesn't be quiet, then you can just sort of
slink out, see if I can get a refund. But no, if I'm going to go to a movie, I'm going to go there, I'm going to sit, I'm going to involve myself in there.
Yeah, you're going to pay a babysitter.
Or at least convince a friend.
Yeah.
No. Don't worry, no, I'm not trying to rope you into that. But it is something I do want to make sure that, I devote myself to. I'm paying money to see this movie. So I'm going to sit and I'm going to put myself deep into this thing, man. Forget what's going on.
Yes, you want to be immersed.
Yes.
That's good.
And so, I have historically yelled at parents that have, tried to have screaming kids in there. Oh, it's just a one crying baby. I'm sure no one will mind.
Yeah.
And I think you may have actually been in the theater with me that one time.
Did you go off on someone? I don't think I was.
I think it was the second Matrix movie. Yeah. And the one person had the crying baby, and, I yelled to them, get their kid out of here. And they actually had an usher looking around the aisle to see who was screaming at them. But they got the parents out, and they never kicked me out, so I consider that a win for me and everyone else in that movie theater that night.
Okay. Yeah, if I was, I may have been, because Matrix 2 was when we were at school together.
Yeah, it was a little ways back, but I remember it because the usher did actually come down and was, looking with a flashlight, wow, I've never actually seen an usher with a flashlight before. This is what it takes, eh? You got to yell at a kid with a couple with a crying baby.
Well, I don't recommend yelling at people in general.
I can see where they were. I mean, I had to just shout it out.
Yeah.
I may have used an expletive. I don't recall specifically, so maybe it was that got him out there.
Well, that's probably enough of that story for now, anyways.
But suffice to say, if you ever want to see an usher, an actual usher, going back to the Bugs Bunny and all that sort of thing, you see the old cartoons where they're in a movie theater, they actually have ushers that show you to your seats, and that is bizarrely antiquated by my mind. And if you're a young listener, it must seem completely alien to you. It's oh yeah, someone will actually take you to a specific seat and show you in, and yeah, they actually used to do that, and it doesn't happen much anymore, but you can get them in there. It's just never for any good reason. So, there you go. But yes, it has made me want to see the movie definitely a little bit more, because it's oh, I'm watching this series, and it's got a tie-in. I want to make sure I'm getting the most out of my viewing experience, so maybe I should go try and catch the movie.
Oh, yeah.
But it does make me feel a little guilty, because that would mean either leaving my wife behind and she doesn't get to see the movie, or we pay the extra money for the babysitter for a little extra time.
Is she a big fan of Marvel? And
I'm fairly certain she's a decent fan of Thor. I mean, his hair is magnificent and his biceps are divine.
Yeah, is that her quote?
No, that's just one of the lines they use actively from the first episode.
Ah.
I don't believe Thor actually is a god. Well, you've never been around his arms.
Okay.
So yeah, Maria Hill actually does think Thor might be divine simply by fact of his strong forearms.
Okay. Yeah.
It was a nice throwaway joke. It was a good line. I laughed at it. So, but this kind of crossover, I find it. Well, it's one of the things we talk about because it's like one type of fiction to another, big screen to small screen.
Yeah. I have to say, I think crossovers are like a good idea, a really smart thing.
When done
do.
right, they're a good idea. Done wrong.
Yeah, you think? Okay.
Like, I don't want to, like say, oh, hey, the new toy they've got from the Happy Meal, you really have to watch the movie to understand it. No, the toy should basically be like a designed whatever that stands alone. You don't have to understand how it works by watching a movie. So that's like two different formats that don't always work right. And historically, when I was young, I have seen stuff like, what is this? Why is this supposed to happen? Does it make any sense? Well, you got to watch the movie to really understand the scene that it's in.
Okay.
And I'm like, no, I really shouldn't have to.
Yeah, true.
It's a Happy Meal toy. I should just be able to put all the pieces together and then just make it operate.
So there's a Happy Meal toy that relies on a movie? Well,
historically, almost a lot of them have. I remember some of the Batman movies back in the day.
Yeah, but I mean...
I remember Muppet Babies, actually. Those ones were surprisingly resilient toys.
It's one thing to have a toy, but, like, I don't know.
A toy that does something that only...
You need the lore to understand the toy?
Well, it's like the toy does like a specific thing, like why did it just break apart? Did I break it? Was it supposed to do that? You have to see the scene to understand why it does what it does. And that doesn't seem right to me. It seems like, well, you're reaching a little bit.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
A kid's toy is not something that they should have to go see a movie to understand how it makes sense to use. So, and I have seen that. Fortunately, I haven't seen it very often. Maybe because I don't go to McDonald's anymore and I don't really look at any of their toys, so... I
go to McDonald's, but I haven't bought McDonald's toys in, I don't know...
Decades, likely.
Yeah, I don't think... Yeah.
Well, now that I got a daughter again, I'm paying attention to it. They got a website up and everything. They'll tell you what's there and what's coming up next.
Okay, yeah.
So I might have to pay attention if I want to be a good dad and just pick up the toy for her. That's just what she wants. So
I guess the question to address is how do you make sure that
your crossover is the best effectiveness?
Yeah, and how do you make sure you're not just getting people mad at you, your fans mad?
Well, I think it should just be like it's a bonus thing. I remember back when Heroes, the TV series, was on its like first season, and it was all big and not like, oh, it was better last season sort of attitude that people had. And what they were doing was every other week they were releasing like a small like online comic for people to read. What did it add to the TV series? Technically nothing. It was just like, and this one's got Hero doing something, like it shows like an extra like or expanded scene that he was in. Doesn't add anything really, but hey, it's an extra comic you can read and it's for free, right?
Yeah.
So if you liked it, here's a little something extra for you. If you like comics and you haven't seen the TV series, read this comic and that should help you out. And if you like the character, he's on the TV series. Watch it.
Yeah. So the things aren't necessarily reliant on each other, but it's like here's a cool thing if
each
you want to learn more.
Each one adds more to the other. It's always bonus content, not mandatory content.
Yeah.
Is I think you're maybe the best litmus test.
That actually reminds me of something I feel like talking about.
Okay.
And that is, a lot of shows do like one-off episodes, like Buffy does a musical episode, like Buffy the
That was
Vampire.
a beautiful episode.
Yeah, and Stargate did one episode where they focused on two of the minor characters, like two of the scientist guys.
And the background characters.
Yeah, and they had a whole episode about that. And Drew Carey, I think, had a musical episode also.
Drew Carey had both a musical episode and then they did 3 live episodes. Because the episode was done live, and thanks to different time zones, they had to do it 3 times that night. So if you had enough channels in your cable, you could switch and see it, and then an hour later go watch it again, and an hour later go watch it the third time, and see if they've improved or if they're starting to get really tired.
Yeah, very good. And that's, Drew Carey show was like genius for that. But I wonder too.
Well, some people found it a little tiresome. I found it very intriguing.
Well, at least they're trying new things, and that's what I'm trying to get at. Is that when you break genre like that, when you say, your show is about... It
was a sitcom. It's a guy in middle management who hates the boss's secretary.
Yeah, and so there's a formula, and so most shows are like, no, we do this every week, and
we do that until the series ends.
Until it ends. So you have two options. You have two ways you can go. You can do spin-offs and connect to some other piece, like maybe a comic book, or maybe do the musical episode but release it separately. Or you could integrate that sort of spin-off directly into your schedule or whatever, and say, no, we're taking a break. This is our musical episode, but it's taking the place of a regular episode. Or
Well, for a musical episode, if you get the stuff right, it works. Because I can still, in my head, just quickly start bringing up a lot of the songs that they had there. And they were good songs. So, when they were singing it, it worked. If it was like an untrained person trying to sing, maybe my memories wouldn't be so fond.
Yeah, it might be. I think what they do with TV guys, like TV people, if they're untrained, they sort of play more music and they give them easy songs to sing. So
I know in a lot of the animated stuff, it's a lot easier. About half of the princesses in the Disney stuff that sing, that's not actually their voice. It's a different actress singing. They just happen to sound similar, but this one is trained for singing.
I like how you say that's not actually their voice. The drawing
it's not
isn't
the
actually
same,
singing.
It's not the same voice.
No, yeah, the voice, the speaking voice actor is different from the singing voice actor.
On the other hand, that does set up for an interesting situation whereby if it's like a TV series and you want to have an evil clone introduced, just have the evil clone speak with the voice of the singing actress, just not singing. In which case, hey, it's you know what? It's not the same voice, but it sounds really like her.
Yeah.
Wow, I wonder how they managed to make it sound so close. Well, they fooled you. They had it pre-planned with the singing stuff earlier. Ha ha.
That's I don't know if you don't even know if that would work, but that's a cool idea.
I think it could work. I think it would definitely be able to have some fun with it. Well, I guess I was trying to go somewhere, but maybe it didn't go anywhere with the, taking time out from your one project, that's one genre, and whether you insert something different or whether you actually spin off. Well, I think you have to at least do something different from time to time, otherwise you stagnate. And I think everybody out there can immediately picture in their mind a TV series they liked that just went, I hated that last season. It was just stale. It didn't work. But then again, everyone can probably remember a TV series. It's like, and then they changed it and it sucked. Mm-hmm. Well, if you change it for one episode, sort of like... Yeah, and that's the thing. For one episode, it's like, I really didn't like that. But you know what, I went back to the same thing the next week, so I'm okay with it. And if it's on reruns, whatever. I'll be okay. I suppose, and then I guess you can get different fan reactions. Like, maybe the fans really do like the different direction that you take, and you can be like, I guess they like it, I guess. And then you could turn... Because that's, I guess... Well, here's the thing is, we'll head back to Disney and all that again. Okay, you got one. There was that, back in the classic era, they had the parody of Buck Rogers. It was Duck Dodgers in the 24th and 1/2 century. Yeah. And it was Daffy Duck dressed up in like a space thing. And that got a good enough reaction throughout the years that later on they turned it into its own TV series. Yeah. Only lasted 2 seasons, but that's not bad for a cartoon series. Yeah. And now people are saying that with the new Looney Tunes series, they had that with the one music video where you see inside Daffy Duck's mind, and he's like a wizard, and all the crazy stuff he does kind of makes sense in his own mind, landscape. Right. And people are saying like you got to make that its own TV series. I'm going to watch the bejesus out of that if you make it. So yeah, just they had a little musical episode. Daffy Duck in his own mind, he's a wizard. How does he make the creature explode? Well, it was really a hot dog he microwaved. He just let it microwave too long and then exploded. That was his magic spell. So actually putting that in as its own TV series because it got a lot of positive reaction. Okay, yeah. You got to try something new to see where it leads. You got to tinker. Yes, indeed. Well, okay. Should we move on to our... Yes. So yeah, that's our little extra tangents, I think. Yeah, that said, our firm worked on the cross-media stuff. Make sure it adds. Don't make it mandatory. It has to always add extra, too.
Yeah, well, you got to keep people hungry for the extra, but don't make them feel like, I don't know.
I think Wizards of the Coast did very good with a lot of their web enhancements. You buy the book, and it has all the stuff, and then you go onto the website, no, it's got a web enhancement. It's like an extra little bit, or, like, hey, here's an extra Demon Lord we present to you.
Yeah.
Anybody can benefit from it, but if you have the book, it really sinks in nicely. And, if you have the book, you really want to go to the website to check it out. And what extra do you get from this?
Yeah.
So I think that might be the best, way to describe it in terms of gaming. Extra, extra, extra. And if you do it right, you get people going extra areas, more content provided, more traffic flows. Everybody wins. Except the servers. They get overclocked. Whatever.
Well, then you have to buy more servers. That's all right.
But, yes, okay, so on to the main topic for today.
Yes. Well, I wanted to talk about hubris, and that's the one-word topic, hubris. And as a sort of motivation for characters, and sort of along that line, like, sometimes it gets to the point where characters sort of expect victory. And
I mean, it's even discussed in the Dungeon Master's Guide that you have to tell players that, no, they can't just learn about the Red Dragon's Lair at level 1, go there and expect to defeat it. Just because they're the heroes doesn't mean they can do whatever fool thing they want and survive.
Well, and I guess what I was almost wanted to start on was, like, what makes you think as soon as you sit down at the table, and this everybody does it, like, okay, I'm gonna roll up a character, and he's gonna be awesome, or he or she is gonna be awesome.
Or it. Sometimes it's a machine.
Yeah, it could be a machine or a spirit or
all sorts of things. We got a lot of good variety in our fictions here.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna. And then the first quest that comes along is like, okay, we get our group together and we're doing it. And it's like we expect to, we're trying it.
Don't try the extra forethought or anything. We're just go march straight into that dungeon, man. We're gonna start just bash down the door and ignore the fact that we've just left our flank unguarded to dire rats.
Well, yeah, and then that happens.
Traps? Oh, we're first level. Nobody put traps in here. I'm just gonna walk straight down the hallway.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess a good DM has plenty of tools to sort of challenge.
Take the wind out of their sails a little bit.
Although I just find it odd that
it becomes a default that people just assume, of course I'm going to survive unless things get really narrow or I'm really stupid. Of course I'll survive. Yeah,
and it's like they don't people don't. Well, every once in a while it's funny because a quest will come up. It's like, your 4 heroes are in a tavern, they're hanging out, and then here's somebody comes in with a quest. And then the heroes are like, well, there is the town guard. Why don't you talk to them?
Because the town guard is a bunch of bumpkins that just hurt themselves.
Well,
they don't even have the proper weapon proficiencies.
It can happen that way, yeah.
It would be fun to portray the town guard that way. That explains why everyone's searching for heroes in the tavern.
Yeah.
We'll get them when they're drunk. They'll be a little easier to negotiate with. Maybe we'll only have to spend half the gold we've saved up for it.
But doesn't it seem odd to you that it just so happens that the people that the players' spirits choose to inhabit are the heroes? I mean, I guess that's sort of.
Well, I mean, you could work it the other way around. Is only the kind of person that takes these bold risks is the kind of person that becomes an adventurer.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, if you or I were to be, or both of us together, and 2 other people were walking down the street, and hey, there's a gate open to the waterways down there. There's there's a stream down there, and they got all these passages down there. I remember hearing about it. You want to go down there? Would you? I wouldn't.
No.
I mean, I especially now more than ever, I have to play it safe. I'm both a husband and a father. Yeah. I can't just go gallivanting around into what's effectively a makeshift dungeon. I can't go, walking down dark alley streets and see if I can rustle up a random encounter, get into a good fight. No.
Yeah, although that is the recipe for a good adventure. That's like, if you're
let's
playing
go something inherently kind of stupid and get money for it. So there's always the risk and reward. I mean, the guy who jumped out of the space capsule to do the dive and then just land and walk away from the whole thing. I mean, he didn't get paid nothing for doing that.
Yeah, like what Red Bull paid him. Or
Yeah,
something.
yeah. Red Bull. Well, first they paid for the whole thing to happen, so at least he got the opportunity to do it. But he didn't do that for free.
No.
No, he got paid a decent amount for that sort of thing. They paid his insurance too, I think.
Okay, I hope so.
Nope.
Or, can you get insurance when that happens?
Provided you can show that you're doing it responsibly, you can get insurance for a lot of things that would be just mind-boggling.
Oh, I guess it'd be really expensive.
Mythbusters is able to get insurance.
Yeah, but their insurance also sometimes prevents them from doing stuff.
No, that's too stupid. We can't insure you for that.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay, you want to jump out of a capsule, and you've been able to prove that you've got all the stuff going on here, you've got this done right. I think we can insure you for that. Yeah, we can do that. They'll make a custom policy for situations like that. It's not just like, just take it from this thing hanging off the wall here. But they'll be able to do it if you can prove that you're not being really reckless about it.
Okay, well, sure.
Which is why you never see insurance companies in stuff like D&D. The players would never be able to interact with them. No, we're not going to insure you for anything on this. We only insure NPCs. And so if the PCs never have an opportunity to use the thing, why do you ever see it? There you go.
Yeah. Well, when do you think insurance was invented? I don't even know.
It's a fairly recent construct.
Yeah.
It's basically, depending on how you want to see it, it could be either like a form of legitimized extortion. Like, you can't drive a car unless you have insurance. The chances you'll get into a traffic accident are actually fairly slim. So basically, they're extorting you for money, and if you ever wind up getting into an accident, they'll pay you some back because, well, that's the law.
Oh, well, yeah, I have heard insurance referred to as reverse gambling, or sort of like...
when you lose, you win.
Yeah, when you lose, you win. You're betting on yourself.
And if you win, you lose, yeah.
You're betting on that you're going to have an accident, basically.
And the insurance company says, no, you're not. And they're providing the odds.
Yeah.
Which is a bit of an odd scenario when you consider it, like happening on like a meta scale. I wonder if you could get insurance like from your DM, like, okay, I'm going to pay you $1 every gaming session. If my character dies, you have to pay me $50. I need player insurance.
Interesting. I don't know if those numbers are quite right, but that's
I'm just throwing the numbers. I just made them up as I went. It could be something like $0.25 a session, and if the player character dies, the DM buys pizza for the night.
Interesting. So the other thing about hubris, I wonder, is if there's a mismatch sometimes in the party, and some like different characters in the same like group.
Really reckless versus some people that are a little bit more conservative.
Yeah.
Hey, slow down, guys. I'm a wizard. I only got 4 hit points here. Let's just not go charging in again all willy-nilly.
Yeah,
those rats bit off half of my hit points the last time we got, wedge attacked here.
Yeah, that's something that sometimes happens, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I'm actually an advocate of lower hit points, especially at the lower levels. It really does make you play a little smarter.
Oh, yeah.
Knowing that an orc with a great axe and a lucky strike is going to knock even the fighter down to 0. So, that's why one of the reasons I didn't like 4th edition is you start off with a lot more hit points at the initial character creation. It's like, what?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a balance to be struck because the PCs are meant to succeed.
They are supposed to be heroes. They're supposed to be doing some inherently kind of dangerous stuff.
They're supposed to, but I guess they're not supposed to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that they're going to succeed. Or they're not even supposed to really. They're supposed to be afraid, right? So that's the whole.
They're supposed to at least acknowledge that fear exists for the actions they should be undertaking, even if they don't display it themselves. I mean, these are people that will try a running jump over a 10-foot pit to go attack a goblin. So, I'm just thinking, it's, not exactly something that a person with fear would normally do.
Yeah. And then...
By the way, for DMs, if you do have that scenario situate up, a very quickened grease spell is hilarious at that stage. Because then they'll jump over top of the pit and then they'll just keep on sliding. And if you have a second pit trap after that, well, it's just like icing on the cake. Jump, slide, no, thump. I mean, come on, the humor writes itself there. Everybody except the guy in the bottom of the pit's laughing at that situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're picturing that in your heads right now. You can see it.
I'm picturing him, yeah. I do have a bit of sympathy for him. Although, yeah, I don't know why he jumped across a 10-foot pit to get a goblin. And
he
also,
ran out of ranged weapons, didn't want to keep shooting arrows or whatever.
Okay, and there was no other way across the pit?
Well, I'm imagining kind of like a large corridor type hallway situation where the pit occupies the entire thing, or spend like a round slowly moving across the edge along the wall.
And is the goblin throwing stuff at you in this whole
Goblins
time
are
too?
always throwing stuff at you.
Yeah.
At least that's my interpretation of goblins.
Because when I play D&D, I like to think, I like to picture, what I would be doing. Because every once in a while in real life, I get to do something that's a little bit scary. Like I climb a ladder onto a roof or something. Or, I have to go out on a deck with no railing or something like that. And it's funny because I used to, as a kid, you climb on jungle gyms and stuff, and you do you climb trees. But as an adult, I'm not used to doing, being in a position where I could possibly fall.
You could hurt yourself, man. Yeah.
So I never even, my day-to-day life, I don't think about stuff balancing and,
What's a balance check, balance check, no, don't.
What if I had to jump over that 10-foot gap,
So yeah, as an adult, it's more of intelligence-based checks. Did I remember to do this? Did I remember to pay that bill?
Oh, yeah.
Wisdom checks or face financial penalties.
Yeah.
Harsh. But the physical challenges aren't exactly there, because remember, when you're a kid, you're about half the size. Everything's twice as big.
Yeah.
And, maybe kids are a better example for the adventure. You don't see most adults just going into the cupboards and looking around and finding a couple pots and pans to bang around. And yet for young kids, that's definitely what they do, and that sounds a little bit closer to an adventurer's idea.
Yes.
What's in here? I'll open it up and I'll start playing around with everything inside. Bam. You're a kid.
Yeah, and they're always doing it wrong, too.
Especially from the perspective of the DM, yes. The DM is the parent while the kids are the players. Harsh.
No, well, that's kind of cool because as an adult, you can't really do that experimental stuff I'm going to jump down that pit and see what's at the bottom.
And the amount of people that get angry for assigning damage when they decide to voluntarily jump down a deep pit. Yeah. It's dude, I didn't even give you damage for the spikes. I said you managed to avoid them. You're still falling 20 feet. Have you ever jumped off a second story, anything? Get yourself some rope.
Yeah, and plus, hit point damage is whatever, and it's a scratch. It's
it's plot armor, that's what it is.
If you jumped off a 20-foot, ledge or a building of some kind, 20 feet, you might, bruise yourself or, it might hurt when you fall, but then you stand up again, you're, brush yourself off, oh, okay, I'm fine. Mm-hmm. But you can, that's also a high enough height that you could, break something.
You could break almost everything if you fall the wrong way.
Yeah.
But, that's the thing, I'll admit to even falling victim on that part of bad playing. I remember one flying castle fortress sort of thing, where in our haste to leave, because oh boy, that head villain really was knocking us around. Instead of trying to go down safely, my scion had the feat that allowed him to manifest a power, and if he makes the check right, he doesn't pay any power points for it. And I took the psychic healing. So about 60% of the time, he wouldn't actually have to pay for any healing stuff. And because of his high constitution, by the time he jumped off the side of the floating castle, he had enough hit points that even 20 die 6 at max damage wouldn't kill him. And then he just waits and slowly heals up in the tiny little dent he made in the ground as the rest of the people come down safely.
He psychically heals.
Yeah, it was one of those old weird 3.0 feats they never copied over to 3.5.
Right.
You can understand why. I got a lot of free healing out of that sort of thing.
Sure, yeah. Broken stuff, that's a whole other topic.
That's it. It wasn't that broken. I mean, for long-term periods, I just, instead of, rolling it, I just took the statistical average and said I pay this much per this many rounds of it. And then I assumed I'm not going to try gaming the system on that.
Okay.
It's just effectively a healing cost reduction. I paid a feat for it.
Yeah.
and that's how I operated it for the most time. It wasn't really something I did in combat. Although, if they do have what I've been told for hit point levels in 5th edition, whereby some effects can only get you if you're underneath a set number of hit points, I might consider it then. The Medusa's Gaze, I think, is the example they're using. If you have less than 90 hit points, it'll turn you to stone. If you're above 90, it doesn't affect you. So in a fight against something like Medusa, you're going to want to keep your hit points up.
Yeah.
Lest you become extra vulnerable to their attack, which I think is a great tactic. So a feat like that would become much more combat-worthy, and maybe that would be considered, at least in my opinion, legitimately broken.
Right, sure.
So, but in 3.0, I didn't find it that broken. I just assumed that, the healing spell or whatever thing you cast costs less. If I'd taken a combat, based psionic ability to use, maybe then it would have been broken. But yeah.
Another aspect I wanted to, if we're done with that.
I think, yes, we hit that tangent well enough.
I wanted to bring up about hubris too, is that often adventurers they'll shoot for something like, I want to be a guild master, or I want to be, found a new school.
There is something nice to be said for ambition.
Yeah, and I don't hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, there's already a wizard school in this town. Well, I'm gonna just try and be, try and help run it." Sort of like,
I'm going to start my own one. I'm going to become the ruler. I'm going to do it how I want, and then I'm going to crush the other one into dust.
Yeah, and that seems to be more common among player characters.
Actually, whenever I'm playing a wizard, I'm just happy that there is something, in place. Like, oh, what, they have a guild? I'll sign up for it. What kind of price break do I get for memorizing or copying down spells? What, I access to them for free? All I have to do is provide my own ink? Well, I'll do that. That's great price cost, because otherwise you kind of have to spend the money on a scroll, copy the scroll into your spell book, and then you lose the scroll.
Yeah, exactly. Are you the kind of player... I think you would be, too, because you had... One idea you had was the portal system.
Yes, I've had some very nice high-end magic fun.
But you're the kind of player who'd be like, oh, there's a Wizards Guild. Oh, let me see what ideas I can add to make so, they don't have a system for scroll sharing in place. Well, here's my idea, and I'll pitch it to them. And you know what I mean?
Yeah. I try and work within the system, not just say, oh, I'm going to make it myself, and then I'm going to get rid of the old system. No, I will, affect change from within.
Yeah. And so, I don't know, it depends on the character, I guess, but that sort of character, do you see that character rising to some position, wanting to be in charge of
I've always found the characters I play would be more preferable to a council position rather than the actual leader. They don't want to be the head honcho. They want to be the guy that helps, says, here's a nice idea. Would you like to affect this? I can help you out with that. And they lend advice to the head honchos.
Okay.
If only for the realistic effect, if you are the head of a guild, you really don't have a lot of opportunity to get away. There's a lot of administrative stuff they need your signature on. You don't realistically have, okay, and then I'm going adventuring for 6 months. I hope I return.
I guess they might even be a multi-class, not even pure wizard, right? A guild leader might maybe have expert levels.
Or at least have a hireling sort of thing that operates thing as a secretary for them.
Yeah.
And they would be the aristocrat or, the expert as needed according to the skills in that case. That said, especially for an NPC, I can see them having at least one level in that to reflect, because that doesn't really change their challenge rating at all.
Yeah.
One level in an NPC class does not change the thing. It's only after you add 2 levels in it that it does. So, from the purpose of seeing it as a character creation, I can see that working that way.
Yeah. We're working under this weird system where it's people have to have actual class levels to have a job, sort of. And I guess
not
that's
necessarily. Okay, you can kill people for money and be an assassin without having any levels of the assassin prestige class.
Yeah.
So you can, if you have the right skills in place, you could lead, a guild without having to worry about taking levels in a expert or whatever class is appropriate.
Yeah.
So there is that. It is always a little bit easier though. Oh hey, expert, I gain class choices of my selection. I can do that easily enough. Of course, sure, let's go with that.
Yeah.
So it makes sense in that regard, just to add a little bit. But for a player, it does mean effectively losing one level to go for the NPC duties.
Yeah.
So that's why I like the advisor capacity. I'm part of your council.
And I'm just curious, like, if you did have a wizard character, you've played.
I've played a
like
few
this
in my
before.
years.
Yeah, if you did have a character like that, what would be their big thing? Like, would the guild be that important to them, or would it be a thing they do on the side while they're working for a bigger goal?
I think the guild would be more like a tool. They become deep into the guild, they become high-ranking, not highest, because, they've got a bigger goal, but they utilize their connections there to help them out with something later on. Like, hey, you guys need some cash flow? I need some decent level people to cast a spell for me here while I'm doing some magic item creation. I'll pay the money for it. You provide the ability.
I guess that makes sense, because sort of the whole idea of a guild is different from a company, because a company is like all working towards the same goal, whereas a guild is
a collection of similar aligned people.
Yeah,
they'll
and they all
help
have
each other
their
out.
own goals, but they're sort of, they have things in common. Yeah, okay.
It especially works nice for the races that have the culture associated with them. So, like a human guild might be, you imagine it like, oh yeah, they got some guild tables and there's some workshops and that's about it. Whereas if you picture the elves are known for their refinement. So an elven guild might have like a ballroom. It might have like auditoriums. And all this added stuff like, oh yes, they were having a guild ball happening later on in the month. We do ask that you dress appropriately. It is a masquerade. And that sets itself up beautifully for stuff. It could easily happen in a human setting, of course.
Yeah.
But because you associate elves with culture a little bit more often, it works itself out. Dwarves, big into secrets, their guild might be more seen as like a secret cult type things. The meeting is when, where.
Cool. Can we turn it to Shadowrun too for a moment?
Yeah, I think we can make that work.
Because now I want to wonder if
they have gangs more often, though.
Well, gangs or corporations. And if you're a member of a corporation, does that tie you more, or does that make you?
It deeply ties you to the thing. Even if you're just a Shadowrunner for a corporation, within the game lore itself, you're really not supposed to get hired by anybody else.
Yeah.
Because then they might suspect you as being a double agent. Like, what's he really trying to learn? How far can we let them into, what we know?
Yeah.
Now, if you play yourself wisely and set up several different like personas, because you can do this. They have cred sticks, for their ID and falsifying that. You could, with a little work and trial and error, set up for several different fake people.
Because you can legally be no person.
Yes,
so I guess
you could be sinless,
legally
as they call
be multiple people.
Or at least illegally be multiple people with the same, level of repercussion.
Okay, yeah.
If they can't find your sin proper in there, then you don't exist. It doesn't matter if you really are there. You had your fingerprints erased from the records.
But if you have multiple SINs or sins in the world of Shadowrun, and say the government, a government or a corporation, gets their hands on you, captures you and puts you in a holding cell, how do they decide who you really are? How do they decide which one is real?
Well, in that case, they'd assume that they're all fake.
So they'd assume that you didn't have any?
Or that none of them can be trusted, at least, as being the right one. And so they'll...
But there's no way to find, there's no way to find out which one, is
real. I suppose in the game setting, they have different ratings. You have, this one's got a rating 4 sort of thing, and you've got a false ID. You need to use your false ID rating, which is, we'll say 4 as well, against this one.
Okay.
And so in that case, they might run and say, this one is a much more believable, set of credit history and usage. It goes on longer, or at least appears to. We'll assume because that one has, within the meta term, the highest rating, that's the most likely ID for him.
Okay. And it might be, a corporation might just make that decision based on what's convenient for them, right?
Oh, yes, especially because the incredibly horrible nature of what they can do to you when you're on their property.
Yeah.
They can just say, Well, this one's a legit personality. This one's a legit thing. This one's hey, this one is completely illegal, and according to the crimes under what you're wanted for, we're allowed to shoot you in the head and give the body to the Lone Star for a reward.
Yeah.
And so that's what they'll do, if they want to.
Now, in Shadowrun, is it one of the things that you can do to work your way up the ranks of a corporation and sort of like eventually lead one? Or is that not even
the mega
possible?
corporations are usually filled up for who's leading that, and they tend to be run by big characters. Now,
like dragons and stuff.
Dragons and just very powerful people. Yeah, in some cases they're not even like, oh, I'm not even a magically active person. I'm just really good at business, so I'll buy and sell your company's ass.
Yeah.
So for them, it's, which is not to say that, as they state within a lot of their like adventure books, however you want to do it, that's your game. So if you want to take over, like the Seder Krupp Mega Corporation, then apparently somehow you get Lofweir the Dragon out of this CEO office. Yeah. How that happens, well, that's up to you. But that's your story, and don't let any future products that we say where it mentions him has to happen. He doesn't come back whenever it uses him in the storyline.
When you say, like, you and you're doing this, are you talking about the party or the DM or
both of them together? I see them all as one in this case. Their story is all considered one, and so if that verges, somewhere along the lines of the official story, veers off from that, it's all legitimately good, and they don't say what you're doing is wrong. They say that's your story. We're going to keep presenting the official storyline because it maintains cohesiveness, and so that way it's a little easier to follow. But don't let that force you into saying it has to be this way. Yeah, but
if a player, like say a GM was thinking along the lines of, no, it's pretty much impossible to rise through a corporate all the way to the top.
Then it's pretty much impossible.
And then the player might like get it in his head that, I want to try that.
You can always try.
I guess, you can try, and the DM, if the DM is a nice guy, he can point out the impossibility of it.
On the other hand, I mean, that's not to say that winds of change can't benefit in time. There have been certain cases in the official history where a person that came out of completely nowhere wound up taking over one of the big mega corporations.
Okay, I like that that's possible.
Yeah, I mean, I believe it was even an orc, which is considered like one of the easiest, races to say, oh, we hate them, we're racist against them, and everyone's okay with that.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about Conan, too, Conan the Barbarian, how he's like an outsider, and he
came to rule his own nation.
Yeah, he ruled an empire. Or
Aquilonia? That sounds right.
Something like that. Anyways,
Yeah, he was not only, like a barbarian, so he wasn't even civilized. He was a barbarian from another culture that winds up ruling everyone.
Yeah.
And they at least accept it in as much as they ever accept that sort of thing. I mean, it's the Game of Thrones. There's always a knife at your back from someone.
Not the actual Game of Thrones.
No, but there's a term for that, the Game of Thrones. I mean, they use that, or at least a similar term in the Wheel of Time series. The Game of Thrones is, who's trying to vie for control of the nation. In the end, nobody wins. Civil war erupts, everybody loses, crops are burned, everyone starts starving. Spoiler alert? I don't know, it's kind of obvious. It's just brought up quickly, and then, hey, by the way, there's a civil war there now. You did bad things, Mr. Dragon. But, yes, maybe it is big. I don't know. I'm only 4 books through, so.
Yeah, okay.
I still got 10,000 pages of reading. I'll get on it eventually, but I've got a lot to go through. But yes, for some of the smaller corporations, I mean, there is things that you can effectively rise to become the head of that, even though it's a subsidiary of one of the mega corporations. And that's a very realistic goal, both from the perspective of it's a shorter rise to the top.
Yeah. And
it's its own corporation, but it's a subsidiary of a larger, megacorp. And that happens in real life. They're subsidiaries, yeah.
Yeah.
So, it makes sense, both in the game and from the meta perspective.
Oh, could you start your own corporation?
Indeed you can. That's a wonderful chance to do. A lot of opportunity for backstabs, shadow runs. Yeah. You want to, we'll say within Seattle there's a decent amount of aquaculture stuff going on. Fish farming. Krill and whatever thing they turn into just the pasty sludge that people, that people will eat, and, There's a lot of soy and a lot of algae-based stuff in the future because, population numbers.
Yeah.
But if you want to, start up your own aquaculture, corporation, you're probably going to want to know some SOPs. You're probably going to want to know some, proprietary information. How are you going to get that sort of stuff? You shadow run. You break into the corporation. You do a data theft of the sensitive information. You keep it for yourself instead of selling it off to the highest bidder. Or, well, I suppose maybe both, copy-paste and all that, eh?
Sure. Bing, bang, boom. You got your own corporation.
Well, at least that way you've got the information base to figure out how to do it. Then you do the startup stuff. That's going to cost money. Where are you going to get the money? Do some high-risk shadow runs. Maybe a little wet work, maybe a little extraction. There's another good one, too. You want the real good talent working in your company? Well, they're working for that company. They're not allowed to leave that company's premises. They're not exactly happy there. So what you can do is say, I'm playing Robin Hood. I'm freeing you to our corporation. Start up, where hopefully it'll last. And then, that's actually a thing in the Shadowrun universe. People are effectively owned by the corporations. You can steal them.
Yeah.
And honestly,
cool.
A lot of the high-end ones, like the people that are working deep with the cyber technology, they don't care who they're working for. Just provide them with a good enough lab and a couple people to research on. No questions asked. As long as they can get what they want done, they'll keep doing it.
It's like, so what loot did I get? Well, 2 IT guys, here's a janitor, and...
If it works, it works. I mean, hey, a good janitor's good too,
Yeah.
But interesting spoils of war can be had in that setting, I will say that. It's not just about the gold and the physical stuff. Sometimes you can get the pay data.
Yeah.
So... I mean, I think that'd be a wonderful concept, even if it's not them themselves, but, someone, a mutual friend that they all know who wants to start up the corporation and they're working for him. They can be, his, black, guild assassin sort of thing. Or whatever term they want to call themselves. They're his shadow runners. And, they got to work on the defense thing, which is not something you do a lot in the Shadowrun. You're really more offensive. But if you're trying to help out your buddy and there's going to be a Shadowrun intrusion, there's another team coming in, you got to play defense. All of a sudden, you're the security guys that wind up getting fragged at all of a sudden. It's just, no, how to change your tactics? Oh, wait, I know how they do this. Remember how we lost to Freddy last week? Hide around the corner. They come running, bam, cold shot to the head. End of their run. We win.
Yes. That's interesting that, the characters... as the most ambitious characters will end up being the ones who defend dungeons and,
Honestly, what do you do once you clean out the dungeon? It's a perfectly good dungeon. It's a nice set of rooms. If the setting allows for it, buy yourself some slaves and, set up a little commune in there. See what goes on.
Oh, yeah.
Let's have some fun.
If you're evil aligned, okay.
Well, I suppose you could even work with neutral alignment. I mean, if they're slaves, they're technically owned.
Lawful neutral and it's legal in the country, so...
It's not exactly the best work a hero's ever done, but it's an interesting way to spend your gold. That said, you'd have to look fairly deep for some rules as to what slaves officially cost in D&D.
Well, you can get hirelings, so that's...
Hirelings aren't quite the same, because, if you don't pay them or mistreat them, they're okay to leave. Slaves, they got to stick around.
Right.
I think it's mentioned in with the Neo guy. For their
really?
official stuff.
Yeah.
It's not that well defined.
In 2nd edition?
No, in 3rd edition, you can look it up. I'm sure a quick Google search, Neo guy slave prices, will get you. It's in there, but Lord knows it took them long enough to come up with that. I've seen a few third-party sources that try and work it like, okay, if you got a stat this high, it gets you this extra price. How many hit die? It works with this. And honestly, I think Wizards of the Coast did it a lot more simplistic and elegantly than the third-party companies did.
Okay. Well, I think at a lot of levels, they do sanitize, and on purpose, for good reason, they sanitize the D&D world and say, well, no, there isn't, slavery is illegal. But then in the individual setting books, it's like, no, this country is allowed slaves, and this country...
Well, I always found it a little weird as to what they sanitized and what they didn't. They didn't have anything mentioned for slave prices. Despite the fact they could have just mentioned that quickly in the DMG, like foreign cultures and this like that. Say, if you want to get a friend NPC out of slavery or another PC, this is the cost it'll be. Or you could just have an attempted intrusion and kill the guys and get the slaves freed.
Mm-hmm. I'd imagine that's another aspect of Hebrew. Oh,
yeah, but they didn't put that in there. But they did switch out back to demons and devils, which they got rid of because they're Satan worshippers.
That's true. Yeah.
It was the Batazu and the Tanari.
Yeah. Although I like
the
those
names. So, yeah, I use them preferentially myself.
Yeah.
But in the book, they are under demons and devils.
Yeah, and then I like that too. I like that there's both. I like that there's sort of, and it works lore-wise too, because it's like, different languages will have different names for them, and here's their infernal name.
It did open up the potential for that. When you go to the 9 hells, you encounter some creatures that are devils, but they're not, part of the actual official structure. Mm-hmm. They're part of a pre-existing structure.
Yeah.
And so that opened it up nicely, that regard. But I kind of like the old names. They're unique. So I prefer extra style whenever given the chance.
But I was going to say, on Hubris, too, sometimes if you present depending on the players, if you present them with a world in which slavery is, I don't know, not necessarily allowed, but like if they encounter slaves, often the player's reaction will be, okay, well, I'm obviously going to free the slaves. And they think they can do that. And I don't know, maybe they should be allowed, like that should be something that
it's a fairly minor sort of goal, like trying to eradicate slavery entirely. That's pretty big. Yeah. But like, okay, you see they've got 4 guards per caravan. They've got 5 caravans, and then we've got the leader in his own spot there. How many arrows do we got? And you've got what bonus to attack? We can do some sniping, reduce their numbers that way, and then we can draw them out into a proper fight, and the number should be decent for comparable fight. I think we can win this.
You can set a few slaves free and have a good, good adventure.
And, that's a nice way to establish yourself as a hero, is just going around doing good deeds like that. Especially if they're unwilling slaves, like, oh no, the slavers are hobgoblins. And, they're going to be, gladiator, like warrior slaves where they get pushed first as, like, cannon fodder. Yeah. In the future battles of the burgeoning Hobgoblin Empire. Well, that seems like a good way to put a crimp in the Hobgoblin Empire, free some innocent people, and kill a few naughty guys.
There you go.
And we're only going on the way to the dungeon. That was just a side encounter. Look how good and heroic we are.
Exactly.
There you go.
Although you don't want to use up too much of your resources, because then it's like, oh, well, we got to the dungeon, but I have 1 hit point and no spells.
Well, that's why you sleep before you go into the dungeon.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully, if the dungeon master's doing it right, going to the dungeon is not like just a simple afternoon trip. If anybody could get there from town within the span of a few hours...
Then why haven't they?
Exactly. Why isn't there more stupid corpses sitting down in here? So you make it a few days away. That way it's like, oh, nobody goes by that way.
Yeah.
So why isn't there a town nearby? Well, there's a creepy dungeon there. Nobody wants to live close to it.
Although there are places in town that are probably within half a mile of my house that I've never been. So, I don't know.
Well, mind you, we're living in a different age. We have vehicles. We have, just mass transportation, public, access stuff that they don't have.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I just had a nice idea for a little thing. You do have a dungeon pop up, and if nobody wants to live next to this dungeon, people are going to start migrating away.
Yeah, well, if it's dangerous, yeah.
Well, that's the thing, is you can have yourself hired as a last-ditch attempt by the members of, the town council. It's like, we're losing everybody. Half of the places in town are empty and closed up. Before we lose our position as council, we're going to give you what we got if you go in and clean up the dungeon for us.
Yeah.
So, that's a nice way. It does sound a little bit more realistic, and it does give a certain little extra oomph behind the players. Not like, there's a dungeon about 3 days away. We don't like it. Could you kill everyone there? It seems a little bit more like as we talked before, like the ethnic, relations. So they're greenskins. Can you kill them for us?
Yeah.
Thank you. This way, it's like, no, this entire town is under threat and we're losing everyone. We need you to do this now. So it's like, oh, we must.
Yeah.
It's for the good of our... Well, heck, maybe that's where they all come from. That's where they start their adventuring career. They're from the town, and they hate to see their hometown lost to just some petty, goblin dictator that's just come romping around with his war bands.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Cool. Well, we've been talking for about 90 minutes. So
And you know what? We never even got into the hubris stuff in the other formats, too. Cause,
oh, right. Yeah.
well, when I watch a movie,
Yeah.
you know, a B-rated horror movie, I expect certain tropes to be followed. And so it's my own hubris saying, oh, I didn't expect that character to die. They hadn't done anything that was considered immoral, and they were not unattractive. So why did they suddenly die?
Yeah.
When really, in a horror movie, you should be able to expect anybody to die at pretty much any point in time.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, spoiler alert technically, but you watch the original, Bruce Campbell movie, the Evil Dead.
Yep.
And he's technically not even one of the protagonists until, like, pretty much everyone else is dead. He doesn't set himself up as being, I'm highly protagonistic.
Right.
He's just kind of the guy, my sister is dead. My girlfriend's dead. My best friend's dead. I guess it's up to me now, and then I'll become a badass. So it doesn't have the standard thing like, you can automatically assume this guy, he's going to be who lives because he's showing heroic traits.
Yeah.
And that is clearly a mark of hubris on the watcher's perspective.
Yeah.
Although, I suppose, long story short on that, the best way to counteract that level of hubris is just to watch better fiction.
Sure.
It won't follow the tropes quite so much. You won't be shocked by, oh no, why did they die? They're not supposed to die. That's how the rules go, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, heck, they made how many Scream movies off that? 4 of them now?
I don't know how many Screams there were.
Yeah, just based off of like, okay, this is how the rules go for a horror movie.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's clearly spoofing the hubris there. Because they expect it to happen because that's how it goes in the movies, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So, yes, I suppose that's just a quick tangent, though, now. We've talked too much about too much.
Too much about too much. I have one last thing. Our email address, simulationist@gmail.com. Our Facebook page, facebook.com/thesimulationist.
Just Google The Simulationist. We're all over that front page.
We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. We're on RPG Podcast. We're on Reddit, even. I forget where else we are. But
we're everywhere. You search any corner of the media internet, you'll find a little bit of us there. Yeah. That's a boast. If you can't find us, send us a letter.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly. Except MySpace, because that's just kind of a joke at this point. They're trying. They're still trying, and I'll give them points for that. It's kind of a joke, though. Let's be honest.
Okay, I'll be honest.
It's a bit of a joke.
I'm gonna have to sign us up for MySpace one of these days,
just to spite me, eh?
Yeah. But anyways,
there'll just be a link to one of our other areas, isn't it?
Probably, yeah.
Just make sure we're covered. All right, best. Until then, you take care out there. Pay attention to your fiction.
All right. Send us money.
That's it.